What's going on, guys? Jacoborth back here with another video of Jacob's Life in Vegas. As I am chilling out this evening. Right now, I'm actually right by these railroad tracks behind me. I haven't been over here in a while and filmed anything over here with these railroad tracks behind me. But I didn't want to do something today. I didn't want to do this video about some of the new laws that have come into effect here in the state of Nevada and that are definitely going to affect those of you that are either traveling here to Las Vegas or, of course, if you live here and anywhere in the state of Nevada. So some of these laws that you guys are going to see, I'm going to go over, like I did this a couple years ago too, after the legislative session. Some of these laws may be a little bit unique to Vegas or Reno. And other laws maybe don't apply to Vegas or Reno. It just kind of depends on the situation. But I do want to go over some of this with you guys. I'm going to just try to hit the big ones here. Because some of these, like especially if you're traveling here, you might be happy to know that things like there's dogs running around. Things like jaywalking have been decriminalized, and if you win some money in the casino but you owe child support, you might not be getting that money. So let's talk about this. So lawmakers, I think it had passed some 500 something plus bills 2021 session. I'll leave a couple links down below if you guys want to look more into this stuff yourself. Procedures about decriminalizing speeding tickets, banning certain types of firearms without serial numbers, raising taxes on the mining industry, expanding voting procedures, lots of criminal justice reforms in this as well. So, which compare this to 2 years ago, the legislative Nevada legislature passed nearly 700 bills and resolutions during the 2019 session, and Governor Sisolak then signed 638 and vetoed just 3. So it looks like we didn't have quite as many this time around, but hundreds of changes to say the least. So some of these changes are going to go into effect at different times. I'm not going to cover every one when they do go into effect, and obviously because there's going to be so many, I'm just going to run through them. You can't give much detail on a lot of these. So some of the ones for business and commerce that have come into effect. It's an interesting one. This is, let's see, there's a change in law that helps local businesses obtain state contracts by handicapping out-of-state bidders based on their policies. Another one classifies robocalling and price gouging during a state of emergency as deceptive trade practices and assigns penalties. Contracts and other business documents are now required to be translated. There's now a lodging tax on short-term rentals such as Airbnb in the Las Vegas area effective July 1st, 2022. Let's see, also adds LGBTQ-owned small businesses to those eligible for various forms of additional assistance, incentives, and protection from discrimination. Another business one says extends existing restrictions on website operators selling a user's personal data to data brokers. That's effective this year in October 1st. Cannabis, there were some changes in the cannabis industry, and this was like a last minute one. I was seeing this on social media. Cannabis consumption lounges have now been authorized in Nevada, and I was pleasantly surprised. I was a little worried to see that was going to, I thought that might take longer than, 2 years, because really the law didn't make any sense the way they had it up. We had a legalization, but it was only if you lived here and had a residence to smoke, and you could smoke in someone else's residence. So unless you were staying in an Airbnb that allowed it, there's really no place you could legally consume cannabis products. Now people would obviously in public in their hotel rooms and that kind of thing, and it was kind of an issue. So I'm glad they have lounges now, so people have a place to go. It helps the cannabis industry here, helps those businesses. So that I was happy to see. Civil procedure, listen to this one. Allows people to sue for having sensitive or personal data publicly disseminated, also known as doxing. That is effective July 1, 2021. So if you're going to I guess if you don't like someone, you start posting, I guess, their public information about where they live, or maybe even family members or relatives or, friends of theirs or people who are their acquaintances, you could be getting sued for it. You could literally be paying for it if you do that. Let's see, also eliminate statute of limitations for a civil action to recover damages for childhood sexual abuse. Civil rights, a few changes. One of these authorized the Attorney General to conduct so-called pattern and practice investigations of state and local agencies accused of discriminatory behavior. Some of the wording in some of these you'll see too, to me, is a little unique. It says conduct a so-called pattern and practice investigations. To me, that's kind of strange wording, but you'll see that in some other ones too. What else? Another one here allows people to sue if someone calls the police on them based solely on their race, color, religion, or other discriminatory reason. Another one adds hairstyles to racially and ethnically distinctive traits protected from discrimination. Criminal justice Statutes of limitations for sex trafficking crimes have now gone from 4 years to 6 years. There's now reduced penalties for underage use and possession of marijuana and alcohol. Revises the element of advancing prostitution. That's all it says. Revises the elements of advancing prostitution charge against owners of property where illegal prostitution takes place. Another one bans ticket and arrest quotas for law enforcement officers. Which I talked to an officer about that a few years ago, and he said nice, because they don't have those. And he said if they were ever if he was ever really pressured to hit some kind of quota, then he said he would actually threaten to go to the media or go to the news or something like that. So now it's official. There's no such thing as tickets or quotas legally that can be implemented in law enforcement agencies. Let's see. Another change revises statutory definition of sexual assault to make it gender neutral. I didn't know it wasn't gender neutral in the first place, but it is now. Another one provides for expungement of juvenile criminal records and for some records to be sealed automatically at 18 instead of 21, which, if you think about it, 18, you're an adult, right? That's when you're an adult, but you'll see in a moment here, there's another law that changed where they obviously don't think at 18 you're mature enough to handle something. So it's kind of weird. Either 18, you're either an adult or you're not. Let's see. Bans the possession of, sale, and firearms who lack serial numbers, such as those sold as kits or made with 3D printers, with the exception for antiques and inoperable guns. This was one gun bill that went through. There's another one that did not go through, just barely, because there was a big fight for it. And actually, both sides of the political aisle actually fought against it. It's kind of interesting. Let's see. There's now an annual behavior wellness visit for peace officers in Nevada. Another bill says revises rules for use of deadly force by law enforcement. That's literally all it says. There's no details. Another one limits issuance of no-knock warrants to law enforcement except to protect the public or a police officer or to prevent destruction of evidence. New requirement for law enforcement agencies to submit information on hate crimes to the state's central records. Change felony hate crime law to allow for perpetrator and victim to be of the same race, gender, national origin, or other characteristic. That's an interesting one too, because not everyone's identity, and if you're specifically talking race or ethnicity or something like that, not everyone, looks like quote unquote, right, what they are. So that's kind of that one I'll just use the word interesting to describe that one, because also, who dictates at what point you are a certain ethnicity or which racial group you fall into, ethnic group, that kind of thing. So I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see how that one gets applied. Another one limits police use of force and requires use of de-escalation techniques. Let's see. Another new requirement for police agencies to enact early warning screening for officers displaying signs of bias or other behavioral problems. Another one repeals felony statute for engaging in conduct that spreads HIV, providing for lesser penalties in line with other communicable diseases. Education, there are some changes in education here in the state of Nevada. Social studies subjects that are part of mandatory curriculum. Changes social studies subjects that are part of mandatory curriculum, removing government and adding civics, financial literacy, and multicultural education effective immediately. Let's see. Suspends for 2 years the portion of teacher evaluations based on pupil growth due to pandemic's effect on education. Raises teachers' licensing threshold for a charter school to 80% from 70%. This is now an English language learner Bill of Rights to help students and their families in the school system. There's a pilot program to provide menstrual products free of charge in lower income schools. High schools are now required to educate students on financial planning and then help them apply for state and federal student aid. College athletes are now able to be compensated, which if you follow NCAA, is pretty big news. Across the country for athletes to be able to do that. Let's see. Another bill. This waives certain school fees for qualified Native American students in the University of Nevada education system. Elections now allows disabled voters to vote and register via electronic systems. Another bill replaces presidential caucuses with primaries and moves them to first in the nation. That'll be interesting to see Nevada's impact on how that affects presidential elections. Let's see. This is a big one. This one makes mail-in voting permanent in Nevada, among other election reforms instituted in 2020 to improve ballot access. That's effective January 1, 2022, in time for the next election. Another one creates a statewide centralized database of voter records for implementation in 2024. Another bill expands the list of state agencies offering automatic voter registration. Employment, here's one change. It says bans employers from reviewing a prospective employee's previous pay history to set a salary. This is aimed at closing gender pay gaps. So it sounds like if you're applying for somewhere else, you're not going to be able to use your previous salary as a guide, saying, well, if you're making $50,000 over here, you come to this job and now you're going to make $55,000. Now you can go in and say, no, I want $65,000, I want $70,000. Negotiate whatever you think you can get as far as your value. Government administration, they add $10 to the cost of Golden Knights tickets license plate to help support the team's foundation. Lactation rooms are now required in courthouses. Changes age and residency requirements to be Attorney General, in case any of you want to be Attorney General. Makes certain public documents such as deeds and voting records confidential for employees or the Attorney General's office. That was an interesting one that kind of caught my attention. That some of these are confidential for employees of the Attorney General's office. Another bill requires public single-stall restrooms to be gender neutral. Another bill increases the surcharge on marriage licenses to $50 from $25 to increase funding for domestic violence services. So that was doubled. Healthcare bills, the legal age to use tobacco or nicotine products is now 21, up from 18, which that's what I was talking about earlier. It's like at 18, you're an adult or you're not. So when it comes to certain things like, weed or owning a firearm, being able to carry a firearm on you, tobacco products, like one of them was earlier about having your records sealed. Like, to me, it's bizarre that some of these things are 18 and some are 21. So, especially in the eyes of the government, because obviously 17 you can be in the military. So, how some of the stuff is decided 18, 21, that's up for debate. Another one requires pharmacies to print prescription labels in additional languages if requested. Medicaid coverage expanded for pregnant women. Changes to vision plan requirements with goal of increased competition and lower prices for consumers effective October 1, 2021. That should be interesting to see, because two things in my young life that I've noticed where the government gets more involved in certain industries, I've seen the costs go up, and that's with one of those being student loans and the other one being healthcare. So even my young life, that's what I've seen. Usually when the government gets more involved, that's what happens, but we'll see what happens with this. Another bill authorizes pharmacists to dispense hormone or birth control to women without a required doctor's visit. This Senate bill prohibits a healthcare provider from performing a pelvic exam on an anesthetized or unconscious patient without their prior consent. Homeowners in housing, landlords are now prohibited from charging a late fee if rent is paid within 3 days of being due, and extends required notice period for rent increases. Another one for homeowners, bars on insurer from refusing to issue a policy or charging more for one based on specific dog breeds. And they're almost done here. Another one here requires Clark and Washoe counties in the state's largest cities to designate zoning districts where so-called tiny houses may be built. And natural resources, a bill changes circumstances for holding someone liable for costs of putting out a wildfire to remove the element that the fire threatened human life. So now you're going to put out a wildfire, it doesn't threaten human life. It looks like you're not liable. Let's see, another bill allows veterinarians to administer CBD and hemp products to pets. Another bill prohibits watering of decorated non-functional grass turf. I talked about that in a video about Lake Mead. Starting in 2027, but it's effective immediately for purposes of implementation. Social Services gives the state treasurer permission to seek private donations to fund startup ABLE savings accounts for Nevadans with intellectual or developmental disabilities. The fact that it's a state position getting private donations grabs my attention a little bit. Let's see. Another bill reverses the law that made those convicted of felony drug crimes ineligible for federal food or family assistance. So Nevada used to be, according to this, if you had a felony drug crime on your record, you couldn't get federal assistance, but now you can. So another bill authorizes minors who don't live with their parents or legal guardian to consent to certain health services for themselves or their children. This bill withholds casino gambling winnings from people who owe child support, effective October 1, 2021. So So if you owe child support and you win a bunch of money here in Nevada, you may not be getting that money. You may be going to your child support first. Traffic and transportation decriminalizes minor traffic offenses like speeding. This bill requires towing companies to immediately release a vehicle at no charge if the tow is at a residential complex, involves expired or no registration, and the owner provides evidence of valid registration. That is effective October 1, 2021. Another bill decriminalizes jaywalking and provides for civil penalties up to $100. So a lot of you tourists who come here, that's maybe good for you, because I only know of jaywalking to really be an issue like on the Strip and over on Fremont Street, where you have a lot of people obviously drinking and sometimes not making the best decisions, and sometimes they step out in front of traffic. Let's see, we have this one, ends driver's license suspensions for non-payment of fees or fines. And the last one here allows ride-sharing companies to use partially autonomous vehicles for passenger pickups effective immediately. So there were hundreds and hundreds of changes. Oh, actually, sorry, I have a few more. For veterans, there's a change here that instructs Nevada Department of Veteran Services to develop a transition assistance program to help veterans, which I thought they already had something like that, transition to civilian life. There's now free access to state parks for veterans with any disability, and tuition in the state of Nevada is permanently free for honorably discharged veterans at state colleges and universities effective July 1, 2021. And then a few in the workplace. Whistleblower protections have been expanded. Let's see, construction industry workers, bill was passed to ensure that wages are paid in line with their skills and prevents what they say, quote unquote, off the books work. The last one requires certain cannabis establishment employees to undergo safety and prevention training effective July 1, 2021. So these were some of the changes that came through the state of Nevada. So if you're moving here, if you live here, obviously a lot of these are going to affect you. But even if you're coming just to travel here and to visit, some of these could affect you depending on what kind of trip you have, what kind of choices you make, and what kind of situations you find yourself in. So not the most sexy video, but it's stuff that some people are going to like, some are going to find interesting because it is important. And, you know, this laws that change like this affect millions of people. So you have hundreds and hundreds of changes in a year for a state of millions of people. Some people, this is important. So, you know, I appreciate you guys watching. Please give the video a like if you didn't do so yet. Again, not a sexy topic, but important nonetheless. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being so awesome. That is it for this video. I am Jacob, and this is My Life in Vegas.